Hello, and welcome to episode number 11 of Hot for Teacher. It was not episode 11. It was episode 12. This is a very special episode, and not in the way that every episode is very special. This episode marks today, January 16th, 2018. This marks an anniversary for me. This marks the anniversary of a breakup. A really significant breakup for me. 3 years ago, my job and I decided to part. Well, you know what? My job didn't decide to part ways with me. I said, you know what? Job, advertising, I can't be with you anymore. This relationship is hurting me. I am feeling dehumanized, and you're making me do things that I don't want to do anymore. I'm not happy. And so we broke up, and I didn't have another relationship lined up. I wasn't ready. Like, this wasn't, me overlapping into another thing. I wasn't prepared. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go, and I'm going to find out what's out there. And it's an important breakup for me because that's when I met you, chat. New friend, job boss. That's when I met you, and I'm oh so happy. It's been good for me. I'm feeling good about my life. Thank you for that, viewers. You're the best. So I just wanted to call that out. Occasionally social media will remind me of things that I have talked about in the past. And 3 years ago today, I quit my job. So here we are. Here we are doing this. So what is it that we're doing? What exactly am I doing with my life? And what are you doing with your life watching me do this with my life? Well, so this is Hot for Teacher. Hot for Teacher is a spin-off of my other much longer running advice show about role-playing games. And in Office Hours, the original, we used to talk all the time, and still do, about role-playing games. But every once in a while, we would learn that what we were really talking about was relationships. And so I thought, you know what? Why don't we flip the script a little? We'll do a sub show. Sorry, go ahead and use your lewd emotes. I get it. Sub has two meanings. It actually has three meanings in this case. We're going to do a different show, a sub show about relationships. So the structure is the same. You submit your questions to me, and I answer them on the stream. We do 3 at a time, and it usually takes us about 45 minutes to an hour, and we talk about relationships, we talk about gender, we talk about sexuality, we talk about friendship, we talk about human interaction of all sorts. So today's first question, we start with a long one. This one's a big one, and sometimes folks need to kind of like, work out their question in text form, and that's okay. Anonymous, I got to tell you, so this question, I do edit these questions a little bit for brevity. I try to keep the core stuff the same, but here's the thing. So Anonymous, I have changed the text of your question because throughout, and I don't know if this is I have to assume this is subconscious, throughout, well, I'll read the question, I'll talk about how I changed it. So Anonymous asked me a question coming from a place of worry about transphobia. So Anonymous asks, I'm worried about whether or not I'm being transphobic. A close friend, who I'm also attracted to, recently came out as genderqueer, using male pronouns, though they were assigned female at birth. It burns at me because I feel like I'm being disrespectful of his gender identity and choices to continue being attracted to him and flirt with him as I always had. I am a heterosexual man. It feels disingenuous to say, oh, well, I guess I'm bi now, when there's nothing about masculine people that I find attractive. This one person that I've seen for so long as a female person starts using male pronouns, and I do everything in my power to respect that and use the proper pronouns with him. However, it feels like a lose-lose situation where the only thing I'm able to do is hurtful. Even just suddenly stopping flirting feels like I'm being insulting. So this is a complicated question, and I want to say I edited the question because Anonymous, throughout this question, I'm not even sure I got all of them. Throughout this question, you referred to this person as they and them. And so maybe that's a quirk of English. Maybe that's just you're working through some stuff. So I tried to go through and make sure that we were correctly gendering this person. I also changed. There was a different phrase here where it says assigned female at birth. I changed that. So I'm sorry that I edited your question, but I wanted to talk about the editing process. I wanted to talk about how I've made changes to the question so that we can look at we're addressing a person the way that they want to be addressed. And the reason that I think this is such a big and complicated question, well, first of all, I'm only sort of semi-qualified to answer this in the sense that, like, I'm in a lot of the same position you are, in that I am also a cisgendered. I'm a man. I am a man, and I was assigned male at birth, and I was lucky enough to have my doctor and my gender agree. But I feel like the most qualified person to talk about this with, and we'll talk about how to get there, is this person. But I don't want to say I'm no good at answering this and just leave you to it. That's not fair, and I feel like that's leaving you hanging. I don't like turning people away or ignoring them when they ask hard questions. So I gotta lay out at the beginning here. I may not have all the answers, nor may I have the right answers for your situation, but I'm going to talk to you about what I would do in your situation and kind of what I think about this particular space. So what I think is happening with Anonymous here, is that there's this identity clash across the board, and one of you has come out with a change in their identity, or a perceived change, right? This person has always been genderqueer, but is coming out and revealing that information to you. And like in Newton's cradle, it is knocking into your self-image and bumping you out here. And eventually you're gonna swing back in, and you're gonna bonk your friend's identity, and the two of you are gonna click back and forth for a bit, and it's gonna be a little noisy. It's gonna be a little tricky as you go. So what I want to try to do is help you negotiate this gently. I want to say first and foremost that you've been given a gift, right? Coming out to a person isn't just about reaffirming the gender or sexual identity of the person who is doing the coming out. It's about offering a vulnerability to a person that is close to you, or a stranger for that matter. Every time that an LGBTQ person, every time a genderqueer person, a gay person, every time one of these people comes out to someone, it is vulnerability. It is saying, I trust you. I am letting you in on something that makes me vulnerable, and this is a gift. And I think it's commendable, Anon, that you are coming to me and to the sort of community that we have here with an intention to handle your friend gently. If you get to a place where the two of you are handling one another at all. I think that masculinity, the thing that is informing your identity, masculinity tends towards a very rigid structure socially. Masculinity tends to be fairly hard, if you'll pardon the pun, around the way that it is structured. And because of that, change can be difficult to negotiate around if you identify as a masculine person, if you identify as a man. Many aspects of what we're socialized to see as positive elements of masculinity, say strength of a very particular stalwart kind, an unwillingness to compromise on our ideals or beliefs, a lack of uncertainty, right? Being unsure is not very manly. It can also be a complicating factor when what we really need is flexibility, right? Masculinity and flexibility or fluidity don't often get paired up. So as far as doing justice to your friend, to your friend's gender identity here, the gift that you've been given, the best you can do is acknowledge his gender identity, right? Use his pronouns, right? Practice them. Honestly, it sounds silly, and it feels silly to do, but like, I mean it, like, practice them. That's the only way that it will get better for you. I know people who have come out as non-binary, and for them, it was hard for me because I was like, this is my friend. He likes role-playing games, and I had to continually repeat to myself, this is my friend. They like role-playing games, right? I had to learn that because it gets into your brain. So practice. Like, imagine introducing your friend to someone, right? I know it feels silly, but do it. It's you feeling silly alone is more important than your friend getting misgendered. Be someone with whom your friend can talk safely with. Support him, support his choices. Look out for other people who are not doing such a good job and help them be better at it. Separate, if you can, your own internal stuff from his. Now, I promise that your turmoil is real and important to work through. He's going through a lot too, right? Now, I don't know how long he's been out to other people, but he is going through something with you as well. And there may not be emotional space for both of you all the time. So don't take up space all the time. Try to give and ask for that space. So I think what you're doing right now, asking elsewhere, is a really good thing, right? Finding other sources of support, taking on your confusion without it becoming his problem is a really good way for you to take responsibility for the job that you are doing in being a better friend. I think eventually the two of you are going to want to have a conversation about that. And heck, by the time you hear this, by the time you watch this video, you may already have had that conversation. But for right now, let's focus on you, because you're the one here kind of with me now, and I would love to work that from that angle. So there's this idea, and again, reinforced especially among men, that sexuality is one thing and that it is always that thing. I think that bisexual, pansexual, queer men are often overlooked or ignored or just treated as not real. That among men, mostly culturally, where I'm from, certainly, most men are straight or gay. And both of those kinds of men don't like to identify with or look down on men who are bi or pan or have any kind of fluidity in their sexuality. And this is very much like a gendered thing. This is about the things that it means to be a man and how that affects these things. But I think there's this idea that male sexuality is very static. And I think that if we think about it, if we really look at it, the idea of being exclusively attracted to one gender is actually a lot more complex and not nearly as simple as it might seem to begin with. For example, okay, you're a straight man, right? You're a straight man. You're attracted to women. Are you attracted to all women? Is every single woman attractive to you equally? Is it the qualities, conditions, and features of like womanhood that are appealing to you? Would any woman at all, just be equally and universally attractive to you? I mean, I don't think so, right? You have a tendency and a preference towards being in relationships with women, being attracted to women, but even within that, there's more nuance than we often give people credit for. And this isn't me saying like, well, everyone's a little gay. I don't know why I got Transylvania in there. Ooh. I just want to point out that probably your sexuality is more interesting and detailed than it might seem to you from the get-go. And to that end, I don't see it necessarily as being beneficial to you to taxonomize yourself too hard here, right? I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that you're entitled to separate your attraction from your identity. You are allowed, for example, to feel attracted to or have romantic feelings for someone whose gender identity isn't strictly your usual fare, right? You can find other men attractive. You can think non-binary folks are sexy. You can have an intimate connection to someone, cis or trans, male, female, genderqueer, and still be a straight person, right? Like, the gay police aren't going to come and arrest you for making out with another dude in violation of the Gayness Treaty of 1979, right? There's some interesting analogies. Speaking as someone who was vegan and is not vegan, I think that they're not as clear-cut as we would like to be, right? Like, you could accidentally eat something with egg in it, and you're not going to have your veganism revoked. You can be straight and be attracted to people and do stuff about that attraction and have relationships of varying levels of complexity with people outside of your identified particular gender necessity. Like, it's just not a thing. Like, the thing about identity is that it's fluid and it's soft at the edges. It's not clear and obvious all the time. It's more about the way that we see ourselves, and maybe more importantly, how we want other people to see us. Right? The only people who are interested in obvious check-the-box style gender or sexual identities are scientists, marketers, and bigots. And sometimes you're a marketing scientist bigot. Now, I'm not exactly like the queer pope or whatever, so I'm not here to issue edicts, but I want to give you permission as someone that you obviously are interested in. You care about my opinion, otherwise we wouldn't be here doing this. I want to give you permission to identify yourself however you want. I want to let you self-define without having to label yourself in a way that doesn't feel right. This is me telling straight men that it doesn't make you gay to think that all that shirtless Link fan art is like a little hot. You can have a crush on whomever, and it doesn't immediately unstraighten you. Because straightness is fluid, just like all other forms of sexual and gender identity. Being gay, or being straight, or being bi, or being pan, it's more about how we see ourselves in the world and the ways that we feel authentic. And in the same way, this is why trans women are women, and gender identity is real, however fluid, in whatever way that it manifests itself. Now, I don't like labels. Personally, for me, my queerness is an anti-label. It's a counter-label. It's a fuck you, I don't want to think about this. I don't care. Right? But for other people, trans people especially, because most of them have to spend a long time struggling under a false label, being able to say, I am this is a way that I am, is important. So in the same way that you're being accepting and open about your friend coming out to you as genderqueer, you don't need to agonize over what your attraction to your friend makes you. Right? I'm basically trying to let you off the hook here about feeling shitty or weird about that stuff. Like, obviously, keep working on you and analyzing your feelings and thinking about your identity, but don't let it, like, fuck you up too bad. You can keep being straight, and you can flirt with your genderqueer friend. And anyone else who's going to tell you otherwise, then get the fuck out of here. Tell them to go back to the gay police station and burn it down with themselves in it. Metaphorically. I don't want anybody to light themselves on fire here. A lot of people, myself included, I see the gender of the people I'm attracted to as an important part of who they are. It's important. It's something to be admired, understood, embraced, and appreciated. It's to be respected, and it is a huge part of who they are, but it is not a requirement that I need of them before I allow myself to like them. Right? Your gender matters to me. I just don't care what it is for my own purposes of whether I like you. Right? Does that make sense? I think we can acknowledge and respect identity without having it box people in. This isn't me saying, oh, I don't see gender. I see gender all over the damn place. And I think everyone's gender identity is beautiful and unique and fantastic. And I want to hear all about it, and I want to respect it. And it's a part of who you are. Now, I think there's some soul searching for you to do here around your feelings of attraction to this person and where that comes from, right? Because it would be remiss of me to ignore the physical aspect of attraction. There is probably part of your interest in your friend that is centered around your friend's body. The physical person that they lug around the world. You probably have some degree of attraction to their meat prison. And I gotta say, like, trans folks tend to have a more complex relationship with that meat and how it reflects or doesn't reflect their gender identity than cis folks do. Which means that your friend is experiencing every day, all the time, to some degree or another, a level of mental and emotional strain around that, which you will not be able to empathize with necessarily, right? They are feeling some body-related stuff that you just cannot have access to. Part of you is probably attracted to their body as the body of a woman, which it is not, which it never was, in fact. You both just participated in this social and psychological situation where that was the story that was being told about this person's body. So if you are still seeing, even subconsciously, your friend's body as a woman's body, and your desire arises predominantly or significantly from that, you are going to get into a position where you are hurting your friend. So yeah, I mean, I can't speak to your friend and your friend's opinions or feelings on this. Maybe he's cool with body stuff and just having you be hot for bod. But if you're still seeing a lady there, if you're looking at your friend and you're like, that's a hot lady with the lady stuff, you're going to need to adjust. And that's fucking complicated. We are not, by any means, in the culture that we are a part of, trained or practice. I mean, fuck, we can barely treat like cisgendered women like people and not like sex objects. And I mean men and the situation. But like, we can barely treat cisgendered women with respect. So how we think that we just get to de facto treat trans women with the same amount of, like, it's fucked up from the get-go, and we have so much work to do. And so I think what you can do here is acknowledge and do that work, right? Take time, acknowledge you do not have the tools, seek advice, sit down with your friend at some point and say, yo, I am having a really hard time with some stuff, and I really like you. I like you a lot. And the most important thing to me is giving you space and support to go through the stuff that you are going through, knowing you have people watching your back. That is what's most important to me, because I respect you as a person, and I have these feelings of attraction for you, but they're not your responsibility. When you have space, when it feels good for you to consent to it, I would love to have a conversation about your transition, my feelings of attraction towards you, and how you and I would like our relationship to look, right? You and your friend both fundamentally want the same shit. You want to treat each other with dignity and respect and care. You want to acknowledge each other and your identities as people. It's going to be a little complicated. It's going to take time. And honestly, your friend has a lot going on right now. Coming out is a hell of a thing. So you might just need to put your own emotional attraction situation on the back burner, right? Sometimes putting others before ourselves is a way that we can show them respect. I don't think anyone reasonable expects a big change like this to just fucking work itself out. Like, I don't think being laissez-faire about this whole gender sexuality car crash that you find yourselves in I don't think it's reasonable. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be weird. It's going to be hard. So talk to your friend. Tell him how you're feeling. Let him know that he's not responsible for your emotions or your attraction to him, but that you wanted to open up that dialogue. But be ready for him not to have room for that. Give him permission. In this case, if your friend has room to go into that conversation, awesome. If not, put the flirting on hold, but talk to your friend about why. You can say like, hey, I'm going to give you some space and try to like back off from the sexy stuff that we were doing before because I'm having some feelings about it and I'd love to talk to you about them in the future, but maybe now is not the time. Shit is complicated, but thankfully, neither of you have to go through this stuff alone. I hope that you can work it out together. I hope you can work it out in a non-harmful, non-violent way that respects everybody's identity and desires. And I hope that if you go to the place where you continue to get to be attracted to this person and that it works nice, I want that. I want that for you. I want that for both of you. And I hope you get there. I think everybody deserves to be happy with their friends. Seems silly and obvious, but here we are. I'm going to pour myself some more tea before we go to this next question. But yeah, this stuff is so complicated. And I think it's easy to feel, confused. I think it's really easy to feel confused. And I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with like being attracted to someone and thinking their body is hot, but we have to not objectify someone, right? You have to recognize, especially with trans people, that their bodies represent different and more complicated things than cis people's do. Simply just because of the way that we're all raised together. We're in this culture as one. So it's always better, I think, to take extra care and time, but not to patronize people, right? Like, just because someone is trans and because they're coming out and because they're dealing with shit doesn't mean that they're like helpless. Right? Respecting someone sometimes means like challenging them. Sometimes it means saying to them like, hey, do you have room for this? Because like, this is hard and fucked up, but I trust you, right? You're a grown up. Being a person is hard. Being a trans person just means the difficulty is cranked up slightly. It doesn't mean they can't hack it, right? Complicated. Man. All right, question number 2. This one feels less complicated, but also one that I feel like I get a lot. This one, and it's interesting. It ties into some stuff. So let's get to it. So Star asks, as one of the few non-monogamous people that I know of, I have a question for you. What is the best way you have found to bring a new person into a romantic relationship? My girlfriend and I have already had a third person into the relationship, but it never seems to work out. I have a feeling it's the integration process that is our biggest hurdle. Any advice would be helpful. So Star, you gave me your pronouns, but not your girlfriend's. I'm gonna take a leap. I'm sorry if I misgender your girlfriend. I'm gonna use girlfriend as my indicator, and I'm gonna use she, her for your girlfriend because I'm gonna talk about both of you. So first of all, I think that basically every person in a relationship of any kind needs to do themselves a favor, seek out a book called More Than Two, and fucking read that shit. Like, read it just cover to cover, listen to the audiobook. I don't give a fuck how you absorb it. Read it to each other in the bath. Fucking read it jumping out of a plane. You know, get on it. Because while there's lots of stuff in that book that I don't personally agree with, there's a ton of really interesting stories and anecdotes and discussions about non-monogamy. It's completely replaced The Ethical Slut as the like go-to text for people who want to read about non-monogamous practice. The Ethical Slut, first wave or whatever, the polyamory, you get out of here. The Ethical Slut is your replacement. So that's the book I would suggest for anyone who's like, how do I non-monogamy? Either for themselves or for others, right? If it's just a topic you're interested in, fucking check it out. I found it hella enlightening because it reiterated something that seems like an obvious truth about non-monogamy. There are a billion, as a metaphor for a large number, there are a billion ways to do non-monogamy, right? That's the nature of the beast, right? All non-monogamy really tells us is the one thing, the one fucking thing that it is not. Right? All it's saying is it's like describing a color as not blue. Like, okay, great, but that's a lot of fucking colors. That is a lot of colors. It's most of them. Most colors are not blue. So the way you describe yourself, Star, and your relationship leads me to imagine some details about it. Though I may be way off base, I'm going to try to get a handle on your relationship based on what you gave me and the language you used, and I'm going to answer that question. Okay? So you describe your relationship, and you describe it as being with your girlfriend, right? You describe your girlfriend as being a part of this equation, which usually means, when we talk about girlfriends, we talk about a person that we have a couple bond with. You're like partnered up with them in some way. Maybe you live together, maybe you don't, whatever. But you have a person that you are bonded to in that way, in that coupley way. Now, this might be a hierarchical thing, right? There might be a hierarchy here, as in, this is my girlfriend, she is my primary relationship, everyone else is my not girlfriend and a secondary type of relationship. Or it might not, right? You might have lots of girlfriends, like you're the protagonist in a Japanese cartoon aimed at teenage boys. Maybe your girlfriend's an alien or a robot or an alien robot. Anyway, there's some other hierarchy language that you use here too, right? You talk about bringing another person into the relationship. And I think the key bits here are bringing into and the relationship, right? It feels to me like there's an existing institutional object, right? The relationship that you and your girlfriend have is the institution. And what you're interested in is bringing a third person into that existing thing, right? The integration process is where you're running into trouble. And honestly, I can sort of see why. It's hard enough in this busy world we live in, populated by total douchebags, to find even one person that we like enough to spend time with and to whom we feel comfortable letting touch on our butts. It is a struggle to find even one person we can tolerate for more than 5 seconds at a time. So when we go searching for someone to integrate into our existing relationship, we're asking them functionally to artificially develop an attraction to, interest in, or just plain be able to tolerate 3 separate entities. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, 3? Here's Adam being unable to do even the most basic math. There's Star. There's Star's girlfriend. But who is this third entity they're asking to be romanced? Now, Star, you and your girlfriend are, of course, individuals. We are all individuals. But as a unit, as a pair of people who have a bond and a history and quirks and in-jokes and behaviors, you constitute a third meta-person. If what you want is, in polyamory terms, a triad, which is to say 3 people who all have similarly intimate relationships with the other 2 people in the triangle, or alternately, you want to form the branch of a transnational Chinese organized crime syndicate. Well, if that last one is the kind of triad that you want, then I can't help you and you're fucked, and please do not tell Interpol you ever emailed me. If it's the first one, you're going to have slightly less trouble, but it's still not going to be easy. Because what you're looking for is someone who's going to like you, someone who's going to like your girlfriend, and someone who is going to like the 2 of you together as a unit enough to want to be a part of that whole thing, right? That's a whole hell of a lot to ask. Now, I don't personally do multi-branch relationship stuff just because I think it can be really depersonalizing for everyone involved. It can be a ton of work, and it can be very hard if you're looking at an existing pair of people, you and your girlfriend, that wants a third person involved. Because of this metaphorical third, the ask is really high for you and your girlfriend. The risk of trying to build something is very, very tricky. So what I'm suggesting here is you take a different approach. Do not try to force this person or ask this person or coerce them in any way, shape, or form to try to love you and love your girlfriend and love the you and your girlfriend's meta person, right? That is too much to ask. My approach that I would suggest is if you're looking at doing the non-monogamy thing, like, yeah, it'd be super cool to find someone who likes you and your girlfriend precisely, equally, exactly the same amount, but that's going to be some fucking graduate level shit. It can be much scarier, and it can invoke a lot of possessive stuff or jealousy stuff. It can invoke fear to try to go it alone, but it's a lot more likely that you or your girlfriend will find someone cool who likes you or your girlfriend if you're not expecting them to automatically like the other person too. Now, we talked in the last episode about the fallacy of the transitive property of affection, right? The idea that someone who likes me will immediately like or love the people I like or love, right? Like, hi, I'm Adam. I love ramen. Oh, you love me? You will also love ramen. Because if you don't love ramen, how could you love me? Replace ramen with your girlfriend. Or replace your girlfriend with ramen. But really, though, I'm sure she's delicious. What often happens is that we think that we can make people like what we like, or who we like, right? But it just doesn't work that way. And what we often do is we end up with two separate relationships that might get mistaken for one, right? You and person and girlfriend, you and girlfriend. Triangle shape, with each line being unique and varied, right? These are not equilateral triangles. Now, you can instead, depending on the form of the relationship, you can do the T-shape thing. Not a triangle, but a T, where you and your girlfriend are just the meta person, and you are dating a person to get... This works better if it's just a sex thing, honestly. Honestly, like, this is a better shape for sex stuff than this. God, that's weird. We're getting into geometry now. But the thing is, you got to remember that even if you're taking that approach, even if you're like, you and girlfriend as one person are dating another person, you and your girlfriend are not Cho'Gall. You're still your own people. So unless you are either very careful and delicate about how you behave, or you've got a bunch of obnoxious rules in place, you might end up texting this person alone. Your girlfriend might pick them up from work without you. And no matter how much you try to be one entity, you are different individuals. That's okay. That is good. You do not want to be a non-individual. It's just about setting reasonable expectations for yourselves and the people you ask to be a part of your life. It's a lot of pressure and very strange to date both members of a couple as one unit. I speak from direct experience here. I have been in this situation myself. And it worked best when the situation was T-shaped. The couple that I was involved with, I loved them so much as a unit. Like, their relationship gave me life. Now, I treated them as individuals, but the relationship that we had was the three of us, not me and one of them or me and the other. And the relationship fell apart when they got a divorce because the thing that I loved no longer existed. I think it can be really nice to have a little unit of people who all like each other and care about each other, but it cannot survive if any part of it feels coercive. Let me give you an analogy. Let me hit you with an analogy. So you and your relationship with your girlfriend is a house. You and your girlfriend built that house together. You decorated it, and it's your house equally, yours and hers. It's a lovely house. Now, you want someone to come visit the house, right? They can come over, they can admire the furniture, they can sleep on the couch, but this is still your house. And anytime you want, you can kick them out. And you and your girlfriend, you will still have your house, but this person doesn't get the house. They don't get shit. When you invite them into the house, they don't get to say how the walls are painted. They don't get to shift the furniture around. Ultimately, they're not even tenants in the house, right? How do you think it feels to be a guest in a house like that? Might be nice to visit, but I'm probably going to want to leave and go back to a space that I have some influence over, right? I want to go home to my apartment. What you want to do here, I hope, you and your girlfriend, what you really want is to give someone an invitation to be a part of that space. You want to hand them the paintbrush. You want to let them remodel. You want them to be a part of the community of care and love that the house represents. And to do so, you have to give up some of the house. The house is your couple privilege. You have to step down from that space. You have to let them have authority. And you can't possibly do that if it is always your relationship and they are being invited into it. So maybe look at it this way. You can hope to find someone you'll both really like and who'll really like both of you. But that's going to take time and patience and failure. And telling someone, if you want me, you have to love her too, is a really good way to drive someone off. And for good reason. No one is allowed to tell me that I have to love someone. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I certainly don't want to impugn the hard work and love of any comfortable operative triads out there. I'm just saying that hierarchy has a tendency to rely on top-down coercion, and love under duress isn't really love. Treat people and your relationships with them as unique, special, and individual, and I think you're going to have a lot more success. Now, I'm only giving you 12 minutes of advice here. Seriously, check out Eve and Franklin's book. Check out More Than Two. Read it with your girlfriend. Talk about what it has to say. Engage in a little two-person relationship book club and work this shit out. Because I think you're making it harder for yourself than you need to. But making it easier is going to take work, ironically. Do the work now. It's going to be better for you. And it's going to be a lot better for the people that you are inviting eventually to build a room in the house that is your relationship. Let them make it their relationship. This is a big one. This is a lot today. I'm feeling it. This is a good one. So question number three. Question number three is a little bit more meta. Hidetsugu asks, I have a meta question that I've been pondering. You're very vocal about discussing the nature of a relationship, and I do agree with you that we'd all get along better if we talked about expectation and consent. However, particularly in older relationships, and I assume Hidetsugu here means more longer established relationships that have been around a while, not like relationships with old people. So particularly in older relationships in which there are a lot of implied agreements already, I found it hard to have that kind of talk. It can even be perceived as aggressive, and I understand why. Nothing in already agreed upon relationship rules mentions mushy feelings talk. So how do you get consent to talk about things like consent? We have to understand that for a lot of people, it's not a conversation that's comfortable to have. Now, I think there is never a bad time to start talking about consent. I mean, okay, maybe like during someone's inauguration speech as like president of the 4-H club, you don't want to be like, can we have a conversation about our relationship? Or like during a air raid drill, or while they try to defeat their hated rival in a white knuckle drag race across the Mojave Desert. But like more generally, I mean, there's no time, beginning, middle, end of a relationship that having a talk about boundaries, structures, and space within that relationship is okay to have. Right? Consent is an interesting thing because it can always be renegotiated, whether we change our mind or we feel differently or the circumstances under which we originally talked about it was or wasn't okay to just have, we can change anytime we want. And it's like the opposite of let it ride, right? You don't have the consent conversation once and then never have it again. We get to change that conversation as we go. The point here is that you can continue to renegotiate and discuss it even if you never have in the past. And this is why I think building a check-in process with your relationships is important and healthy, right? Sometimes you might feel like you're not sure when a good time is to bring up the fact that, you know, you just don't feel okay sharing your beloved dinosaur onesie with your partner anymore. But how do you check in if you've never had these kinds of conversations before? What do you do when you're confronted with a massive pile of assumed boundaries and understanding that you just never got around to talking about in the first place? So let me say this. Externally placed consent isn't consent at all. Socially assumed consent isn't. Just because someone is your boyfriend or your husband or you've just been together a long time doesn't mean anyone gets to say, no, you're not allowed to talk about our relationship. I don't know about you, but if a relationship that involves any kind of emotional connection doesn't allow for mushy feelings talk, I don't want to have that relationship. If I say to someone, hey, I'm having some like concerns around consent and boundaries in our relationship. Can we talk about that? And they're like, I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, see you later. There's the door. But that being said, I don't think consent talk has to be like super emotional and intense. Like I don't think it has to be all mushy, intense, cry, feeling sad, upset bullshit. I think it can be just like, hey, how you doing? How are things going for you? Do you like it when? And then you talk about the stuff that's on your mind. Like, here's an example of like a recent conversation I had with someone around consent and sort of what I was thinking, but we didn't even frame it as like a consent conversation. I said to them, because I was feeling a little guilty, I said to them, hey, it's really meaningful for me when you cook for me. As a man, having a woman cook for me feels a little fraught in terms of gender roles, and I feel like a little awkward or guilty about this, and I'm not sure how much of this I expressed, but I said, hey, it means a lot for me. I also acknowledge that I am helping in the process by like making sure that it's like fun and easy for you. I clean up and I buy the groceries that we use when you cook. Does that feel like fair and equitable? And this person said to me, yes, I love it. It's a way that I can show care. I don't often get to do this. It feels nice for me. Done. That was a conversation about consent, right? I was asking permission for the situation to continue, and she gave me that permission, that it was okay. It doesn't have to be like a big, intense thing. It doesn't have to be about sex either, right? We come at consent conversations from a sexual perspective because that's maybe where it's like most important. But you can have conversations about consent all over the place. And it doesn't have to feel super intense and hard, right? Consent should be a thing that informs everything about your relationship, whatever kind of relationship you're in. We are, as people, happier, more confident, more comfortable, and just better off when we know that the people we care about are doing what they're doing because they want to do those things, right? I think a lot of folks have a hard time with this kind of let's talk about what our relationship is talk because there are assumptions in place that nobody ever talks about. In a way, it's something I feel bad about for people whose only relationship experience tends towards the straight, the hetero, paired couple, monogamous structure, right? Now, I'm not saying I feel bad for them because that's a bad way to be. I'm saying I feel bad because there's so much cultural pressure on people who are in straight, monogamous, two-person, like normative relationships. There's so much cultural pressure and so little expectation that people are going to just like work that shit out. You're supposed to just know how to have a straight paired couple relationship. You're supposed to just know how to do that. And on the flip side, I don't think we can assume that every queer or non-monogamous person instantly knows how to have these conversations, but like it tends to be a requirement when you're literally crafting your relationship structure from nothing. I wish that we taught teenagers how to have these conversations better, right? Like when you start dating, have a talk about what dating means to you. If you're someone's boyfriend, would it make you feel bad if they flirted with someone else? How would you have a conversation with them about that? What about them smooching someone else? If you and another person are having sex with each other regularly, does that mean that they shouldn't have sex with someone else? What does your idea of monogamy look like? Let's teach you, young person, how to better affect a space that respects consent and to better know what kinds of relationships you want. I think the problem is that a lot of the time we just coast on this expectation. We play into narratives that exist already because talking about this shit can make us feel disarmed, exposed, weird, and awkward. But the thing is, if we don't take that risk, if we don't feel awkward and vulnerable and weird, we rely on a harmful narrative because so much of the prevalent narrative is like just bad for us. Especially the way that men are taught to look at sex and the way it disempowers women around consent. I mean, fuck, like, look at the media right now. Look at all of this stuff that's going on. I mean, while I was writing this, all of this shit about Aziz Ansari was coming forward and people were talking about the prevalent narratives around straight people having sex with each other. We do not know culturally how to have this conversation. The narrative romanticizes the chase. The narrative can encourage playing hard to get. And it doesn't give us ethical habits around saying no and hearing no, around consent, right? So here's the thing. Whether it's awkward or not, whether it feels aggressive or pushy or whatever, having a conversation about what we do and what we don't consent to is something that everybody just needs to fucking get over and do. Right? And I think the way that we can start these conversations is not by forcing huge change or even expecting anything new, but by looking at these conversations as a reaffirmation of what's already true. Have a conversation about consent that feels assumed already, right? For example, let's imagine that here's what happens in the morning. You wake up in the morning and your partner is an early riser. So you go downstairs and you find them in the kitchen and they're making coffee and you come up behind them and you give them a hug and you kiss them on the cheek and you say good morning. Totally understandable. You would assume that that is just fine. And it probably is. They probably really like it, right? If that's something that you always do. Ask them. Just be like, hey, I I really like it in the morning when I can like wake up and come downstairs and you're already awake and you're making coffee. And I like our little like good morning smooch. That feels good. How do you feel about it? They're probably going to say, oh, I really like it too. Right? Done. That was a conversation about consent. They can change their mind later, right? Some mornings, maybe they don't feel good. Maybe you come downstairs, you're like, oh, good morning. They're like, I don't feel very good. Like, give me some space today. Renegotiation of consent. Bam, you just did it, right? You can go to this person if you want to get higher level about this shit. You can go and say, hey, so I've been watching this show on Twitch or on YouTube that this person that I like has some ideas about consent and cultural narratives and how sometimes it can be awkward to talk about consent and boundaries with the people you're in relationships with. And I was wondering if you would feel comfortable talking to me about that, or like watching an episode of that and then talking about how we felt about it. It doesn't have to be a change talk. It can absolutely be a what are we feeling talk. Just going back and forth, agreeing about consent stuff can feel really good, right? So, hey, I was thinking, I don't really want to smooch anyone except you. Oh, that's cool. I don't want you to smooch anyone but me either. Done. Consent talk. Confirmed. It might feel silly, but having a talk about where you're at and just reaffirming your assumed stuff can be super meaningful. You're effectively overriding the cultural imperative not to talk by talking and agreeing the shit you're already doing is working for you. If you want to have the most normative relationship in the whole world that fits right in with every single one of your culture's assumed behaviors, fucking go for it, baby. Just do it on purpose. Fucking be monogamous like you mean it, right? Own that shit. I think it's important to undo a lot of the bad habits that we learn in relationships. And not talking about stuff that is easier just to avoid is one of the worst, because it can lead to so much pain later down the line. So what I think you need to do, Hidetsugu, and everyone else for whom this is resonating, is be brave. Have the talks and feel them becoming less and less weird the more you do them, because that will happen. I promise. It's just like getting comfortable with someone's pronouns when you're not used to using them. Practice. Do it. Talk to them. Start low stakes with your friends. Start low stakes with your partner. Reaffirm what you already feel. And then you can slowly build up to that place where you feel comfortable about the big weird feelings talks. Like everything else, relationships aren't one and done. You're not just in them and then they are what they are. Relationships are a project. They're work. And they're fun work. They're good work. You know what else is good work? Answering your questions. Yeah, you like that? Segue. So thank you for coming, everybody. This is episode number 11. Nope, it wasn't. That you have just listened to or watched or both. Hopefully both. And thank you for submitting your questions for me to answer. If you would like to continue, if you'd like to be a part of Hot for Teacher, you can go to my website, www.adam-koble.com. There's a little link for Hot for Teacher. You can click that, fill out the form, and submit it. And I will get to your question. There are a lot of them. I may not answer yours directly if it's very similar to someone else's, but I love seeing them in my inbox. I read every single question, and I hope that today's episode has been helpful for you. And I hope that I will see you again in a couple of weeks for episode number 12. This was episode 12. Thanks for coming, everybody. We will see you next time.